Welcome back to Whence Came You, a Masonic podcast featuring research papers and discussions related to Freemasonry. Here's your host, Brother Robert Johnson.
All right, welcome back. This is episode 313. I hope you enjoyed last week's episode, and I guess I owe you guys a little bit of an explanation. We were going to talk about the Worshipful Master Station on the Masonic Roundtable, but it looked like all of us just had something get in the way, and we couldn't get on the show. I was out at a work function, and everybody else had something going on too. A perfect storm. I do apologize for that, but the good news is I won't miss that next episode, as I thought I would. We'll get to talking about the Worshipful Master on next week's episode of the Masonic Roundtable next Tuesday at 10/9 Central, so please join us for that. This week, we've got a great episode. We're talking with Frater O about the craft in general, and we kind of bounce around as we usually do. I think you'll enjoy that. We've also got a wonderful piece, a new Masonic Minute, number 62, with illustrious brother Stephen L. Harrison. It's called Washington's Invisible Ink. I think you will all get a kick out of that one. October 2nd, I'll be Skyping in to Troy Lodge, number 34 in Missouri, to do a cool presentation on traditional candidate preparation. Now, it's interesting what it sounds like, and I hope you kind of catch on. It is about the use of certain practices while preparing the candidate for his first degree, second degree, and his third degree. Should be a great time. Again, this will be my first time Skyping into a lodge, so it'll be pretty cool. We've got some other Skype-in events happening in 2018 as well. I did want to touch base again to let you all know that if you have an Amazon Echo, you can add the Midnight Freemasons to your flash briefing. So just search in the skills for the Midnight Freemason and go ahead and enable that. It'll actually read you the 3 pieces that we read each week. So if you want, you can just say next, and it'll skip the one you're on and go to the next one. This was an oversight on my part. I didn't mean for it to do that, but if you don't mind, I don't mind. I do apologize. Again, my first foray into making skills on the Amazon Echo. Some of you who follow me on social media heard a rumor that I left the Scottish Rite. I did not leave the Scottish Rite. I left the Northern Masonic jurisdiction. For a long time, I have been a dual member of the Northern and Southern jurisdiction. It just so happens that, as many of you know, I align more toward the educational side of Freemasonry and enjoy the Southern jurisdiction degree style a little bit more, and it just aligns with my journey in Masonry. So I just left the Northern jurisdiction. I'm not out of the Scottish Rite by any means. So we are still Scottish Rite brothers, and I'll still be going to the Valley of Chicago on occasion. As we all know, we have a joint visitation. So the only difference being I have to pay when I go now because not a member, obviously, and that's expected. So put that rumor to rest. And this is kind of a cool thing I want to mention. This is happening very soon, so I'm not sure if you guys have enough time to make this happen or not, but I did receive an email from Worshipful Brother Troy at Vancouver Lodge of Education and Research. So I'd like to also mention that on October 21st, the first Esotericism in Freemasonry conference is being held in Seattle, Washington. They do have limited seating. It's described as a consortium of Masonic leaders in the Pacific Northwest, have laid the foundations for the first Esotericism and Freemasonry Conference. A single-day event will be focused on Freemasonry's impact on the philosophical and spiritual lives of its practitioners. If you go to esotericmasonry.com, that's esotericmasonry.com. They've got a nice website up. You can buy your ticket there. It is limited seating, so I'm not entirely sure how much room they have. However, you can email your inquiries to esotericmasonry@gmail.com. It looks like they're going to start the day at like 9:45. They've got some opening remarks at 10 o'clock. They've got Brother Scott Gavoni, who's going to do Holy Smoke. Brother Eric Arneson is doing the Art of Memory. Brother Trevor McEwen. Brother Trevor is going to be doing Masonic Print Culture. Brother Doug Russell, Masonic Meditation, Contemplation, and Prayer. Brother Chris Foxon will be doing Freemasonic Symbolism in Garden Design, Esoteric Thoughts in the 18th Century Landscape and Garden Design. So that sounds pretty neat. They have a break then about 3:30, it looks like they come back. Brother Joshua Metz is doing an esoteric analysis of the symbolism of the first degree. And at 4:15, they're doing a presenter panel hosted by the Worshipful Master Troy. They'll focus on how academia sees Freemasonry and esotericism, and it looks like it's $30 to go, and I don't think that's unreasonable. In fact, if you are in that area of the country, it sounds like something that would be very cool to go to. Again, Esotericism in Freemasonry Conference will be held at 4338 University Way, Northeast, Saturday, October 21st. It's hosted by University Masonic Lodge. So again, check them out, esotericmasonry.com. I think that's it for the news. So let's get into this cool conversation we had with Frodero, and then after that, we'll go into this week's Masonic Minute with illustrious brother Stephen L. Harrison. All right, everybody, we're back this week. We've got Frodero in the program, and we are going to be talking a little bit about everything, but we've got a little bit of a focus here when we're talking about reading. Recently, Frodero and I were discussing the fact that there's a lot of Masonic books out there, and Masons today like to reference those books, and there's not a whole lot of real reading going on. And in recent weeks, I've noticed that a couple other Masonic podcasts have posted links to a great paper that Albert Mackey wrote called Masons Who Read and Masons Who Don't Read, or Reading Masons and Masons Who Don't Read, something along those lines. And we actually did an episode on it a while back where I did a reading, and Frodero and I did a discussion on the paper. We talked about the actual paper, some of the elements it contained, but also we talked about Albert Mackey and how his mental state was at the time that he wrote this, because there's a lot of speculation that Mackey's writing was a little all over the place, especially toward the end of his life. They felt that maybe he was a little wonky there toward the end. But all that aside, the serious topic of Masons reading the material and knowing the material, and more importantly, understanding it. So first of all, welcome back to the show, Frodero.
It's always a pleasure to be back on. Thanks for having me.
Oh, absolutely. And I hope everybody is enjoying the audio. We spent some time calibrating things a little bit, and I feel that we've got a much better audio mix at this time. So thanks for your patience in getting Frodero back on. We actually put a hold on some of our interviews because the audio was going back and forth. With the acquisition of our new computer that we're using for the podcast, we had to reconfigure some audio stuff. So that all aside, let's just dive in. One of the conversations I had recently was on the Masonic Roundtable. We were discussing the elements of the responsibilities of the wardens, and we talked about the senior warden, and one of the interesting points was I was able to pull out the Grand Lodge of Illinois. They have a guide for officer advancement. Now, this example itself is not necessarily anything esoteric or spiritual, but what I want to touch on here is, well, I'll get to it, but I mentioned a few of these duties that the senior warden has, and John Ruark, one of the hosts of the Masonic Roundtable, said, I find it fascinating and just so amazing that you guys actually have that in a book and it's written down. That's amazing. And my comment was, I don't think it's very amazing at all. In fact, you're taking a giant leap of faith there, even assuming that anybody reads this stuff. These books have been out for years, and when I hand these books out at my lodges, I would say 80% of the members go, wow, I had no idea any of this was available. Well, you did, and you just never opened it up. And I find this is a large problem. Like, we're given the information, and yet nobody goes after it. Frodero, have you experienced this?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's disappointing. There's a certain state that I'm a member of Mason in a jurisdiction where you go through each degree, you get Claudi's books, each degree on little blue books that cover each ritual and what you went through. It's pretty basic. It explains everything you went through right to the point. And the Cloudy books, cover all the rituals and degrees. And then they have a LOI, and the LOI goes over the Cloudy books. But a lot of times in the LOI classes, no one reads the Cloudy books, let alone, they're so overwhelmed to go through the degrees, which is, it can be understandable. There's a lot to take in. There's a lot that's going on. So Massachusetts is very similar with planning to the point. And as you know, there's every single lodge, there's always Mackey's encyclopedia or some sort of text there they could always pick up. With any word they've heard, they could just pick up the book, but let alone just go into Google and type it in. But it seems very few Masons even decide to do that.
It is interesting. Like you mentioned the term LOI. What exactly is that?
So the LOI in Massachusetts is called the Lodge of Instruction.
Oh,
appropriate districts.
right on. So we have a Lodge of Instruction as well. I just didn't put it together because we use a different acronym for our area. But in any case, you mentioned that this stuff has gone over, and what I think is funny is it seems to be there's no fear in not learning it and the ability to just say, I'm going to go to the LOI, and yes, I haven't read it, but I'm going to go to the LOI, and they'll teach me what I need to know just verbally. This is assuming, of course, you're not in the back, chit-chatting. And of course, this comes down to a tangible thing like Lodge of Instruction, like rod work and verbiage. And so we can't talk about the later things like esoterics without first understanding even the rudimentary facts of showing somebody how to do something factually that's grounded right here. If you're not going to read those texts, what chance do you have at understanding anything deeper? Now, there is the argument that some things are going to hold your interest, I think, a little bit better than others. And of course, esoterics and some spiritual texts might hold you a little bit better than, say, how to make a square corner, but it is the same regardless. One of the other things that I find happens quite a bit is people like to talk about Masonic books that they've read, and yet they have not read them. In fact, there are so many websites out there that host all these Masonic books, and there's chat rooms and Facebook and all these things, and people are like, oh my God, I just picked up this sweet book. Now, over the last 2 weeks, I've acquired 4 new books. 3 of them I can read. The first was Michael Pohl's Measured Expectations, which he hits on some great elements about what we're talking about tonight. The other book I picked up was a great book by David Heim Smith, which I have every intention of reading, but have not started yet. And the other is Bromwell's book that we've talked about a plethora of times here on the show, and I'll read that also. The fourth, of course, was the Voynich manuscript, which nobody can read, regardless of what you've heard on the internet. It's not been translated. But I have every intention of reading those books. But you find guys that will post pictures or of whatever, and their goal is to grow this library. But what good is this growth of library without actually cracking open a book? I think, Frodero, you can attest to this. When we've gone to the House of the Temple, to the library, to do research, the librarians there, it's like you walked into a room where the librarians are these guardians, right? And they only come to life when somebody walks in the room. And they walk in, and it's like all of a sudden they're on and charged and thirsty for you to do the work, right? I mean, it's incredible.
It is a great feeling. Yeah, it's a very great feeling to be able to walk in there and have that feeling at the House of the Temple, but in any library or any person that's really passionate about a subject as well. If you're being able to be on the same page with them and have a deeper discussion about the actual physical material. I mean, to piggyback off of one of your points you brought up with people love to post pictures. I mean, how many brothers have talked about their favorite book has been Secret Teachings of All Ages, and then you start talking chapters, and then they can't keep up with the material.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm not judging. Maybe it's because they retain information, or maybe they didn't read it, or maybe it's just, for both of us, when I first read it over a decade ago, it was a 747 over my head. I didn't understand anything that it was written. It takes time. So everyone's on their own chapter, in their life. And we have to also give them respect too. A lot of times people just don't read. RJ, my facts and my numbers are off. I know you know better statistics than I do. What are they?
Well, according to a poll, actually, by the Jenkins Group back in 2003, so years ago, and my feeling is this has probably gotten worse over time, 33% of high school graduates never read another book for the rest of their lives. And in fact, 80% of U.S. families didn't buy or read a book at all last year. And 70% of U.S. adults have not been in a bookstore in the last 5 years. Now, in 2003, I don't know if you would consider Amazon a bookstore, even though it was. And another interesting fact is, and I think I'm guilty of this one, is 57% of new books are not read to completion. So that's interesting in itself. I mean, how many times have you picked up a book and then something else immediately grabs your attention and you're off to the next book? But I don't consider that a real problem. In fact, I was talking to one of my one of my mentors, Brother Haynes, he said that that's normal, to just bounce from book to book to book. I guess the problem is that we're not bouncing into book number one. You mentioned all these guys who will go out there and they'll talk about Manly P. Hall, Secret Teachings of All Ages, and I've not even read that book all the way through. So I could never call that book my favorite. It's a great book. My favorite Hall book that I've read to completion is The Lost Keys of Freemasonry, but I like it, right? Because it's 80 pages or something, plus illustrations.
We did an episode a while back on concentration and the importance of concentration. I don't hold me to the exact number. It was sometime last year. We'll put it in the show notes. And the ability to peel back layers of concentration and meditation, the importance of how concentration is the counterintuitive to meditation and vice versa, and how they go back and forth, and how to be able to just quiet down the mind, to be able to focus and being able to retain information. Because in this day and age, we have so many sensory inputs, and we're on sensory overload consistently. And I know this is kind of off the topic of reading, but one thing that's helped me intensely, we've chatted offline about this, is there's a device called Muse, M-O-U-S, M-U-S-E. It's a headband, an EEG headband, fairly reasonable. You can find on Amazon, and it syncs to any phone via Bluetooth, and you're able to keep track of your brain waves, and it's pretty fascinating. It's great for concentration, great for meditation. It gives you kind of like a metronome of when you kind of go off and so your mind starts to wander, to be able to bring you back. So there's apps now that are developed too for golfers, that people that do in sports or karate or any concentration, that they can wear this headband and they'll keep track of their brain waves and current states, and let you know when you go off via notification. Or if you wear headphones, it'll give you noises. Case in point, when you meditate, those who are new to the podcast and haven't heard us talk about this like a million times, meditation is important. And so with the Waze headset, which is awesome, when you're listening to it, when your brainwaves are calm and you're in certain frequency states, that you'll be listening to an ocean, and you'll hear waves, you hear birds chirping. But the more your mind starts to wander, and more the brainwaves start to go interactive and jump between different hertz or frequencies, between beta and delta DLB states or frequencies, you'll start to hear louder noises or wind pickup. So it's a great for concentration. Those who struggle with the ability to retain information, it's a nice starting point.
So one of the elements of meditation that I find fascinating, actually, well, before I guess I get into that, I should say that the focus element of the meditation is so key, because to tie it into this reading element, I don't know how many of you out there have done this. So I hope that we're giving you a little bit of reader's affirmation here when I say things like, it's okay to jump from book to book. This happens. At any one time, I have 5 to 6 books that I am going through, plus I'm probably listening to at least one audiobook at the same time. Does the information get mixed up? Should you be scared that it will get mixed up? So guess what? I've tested this on myself. It really, I don't get mixed up. In fact, your brain is an amazing, amazing processor. Something like your brain has the ability to hold something like 360 years worth of television broadcasts, if you were to compound it that way in terms of space. Processing power is amazing. I've tested the cognitive ability to focus in reading by doing one task. This is reading to my children at night. So we will always read novels, and we read the classics. We're reading Jules Verne. We're reading C.S. Lewis. We're reading H.G. Wells. And my kids love it. Okay, I mean, granted, C.S. Lewis is difficult to read sometimes, even for an adult. But we've recently gotten into, my kids love the Hardy Boys, and they love Nancy Drew. And we read a chapter of each every night. And you would think that 2 detective stories would somehow get mixed up, and they don't. So that is your reasoning for parallel reading and being able to, or not parallel reading, your ability to multitask read. The other affirmation that I think is important to understand is, how many times have you started to read and you found that just like you're listening to a news broadcast, or maybe you're reading a book and you're literally somewhere else. You're thinking about something completely else, like not even what you're reading. The next thing you know, you flipped 3 pages or read 3 paragraphs and you go, shit, I gotta go back and reread this. But how many times do we go back to reread it? I'll tell you what. If it's for work, I am not going back. I have come too far. But if it's something I'm interested in, masonry, esotericism, occult, I'm going back to read it. And that's my issue with focus. So these focus exercises, this tool that you've started to use, I've actually started to think about buying one myself, just to test it out and see where I am. And see, we can always benefit from these tools. A popular saying back in the day was better living through chemistry. Today we have technology, things to remind us. I wear an Apple Watch, and whatever it is, every 3.5 hours my watch vibrates. And it's like, hey, it's time to do your breathing and meditate. And it's real easy to just say no. But I always stop to do it. We go off, and it helps me refocus for the day, helps me refocus on whether I'm reading endless PowerPoint notes at work, or whether I'm at home in the office just rolling through a book, ebook or a paper book, whatever it is. I hope some of this affirmation and helping you to understand struggles in reading, as we are adults, not that we have problems with dyslexia or anything else, but just problems with focus. These are problems everybody has, and you can work through them. And I hope that if you're a reader, or you want to be a reader, but you don't because you experience these things, maybe this will change your mind. One of my biggest anxieties, Frater, for the future is a lot of people are concerned with global warming, and they're concerned with politics and nuclear war and all these things, and famine and hunger. And I guess in my little bubble in suburban America, one of my biggest fears is people just aren't reading, and Masons especially. You have a book like most guys have opened up a Mackey's Encyclopedia. What would you say, aside from Mackey's Encyclopedia, the most read Masonic book that you can think of is, with brothers in your area or that you've talked to? For me, I guess I could say Claudy, right? Because a lot of guys like Claudy, and for a long time I felt Claudy was just one of these kind of basic dudes who really didn't get it. But I've read some of his papers, and I tend to disagree with my old self now. I think Claudy did get it. But what do you think the most read texts are outside of Mackey?
It seems to be like 3 categories from my research, right? So you have the people that were hardcore Dan Brown guys, right? So they read Dan Brown, and then they became a Mason, and they're looking for all these secrets and all these symbolisms and all this jazz, right? So that seems to be pretty popular, especially for the younger demographics of Masonry that come in. And Brown's a great writer. He has a lot of unique symbolism that's hidden directly in plain sight for those who can kind of peer through it, as well as symbolism in his movies that have been hidden directly in plain sight. They've been pretty crafty and clever with putting that there. But besides, you get out of the Dan Brown world and out of the fiction genre, and usually people I've found gravitate towards either 2 other authors. If they're going the esoteric route, usually they fall into the category of Hall or Pike, right? So if they're going Scottish Rite, they're, of course, picking up symbology, doing the Master Craftsman program, and they're reading Morals and Dogma, which are excellent texts, if you can get through it, of course. It's written at a very unique level, and it's written at a very unique strain of consciousness, or stream of consciousness, which can be pretty difficult to read and retain. Manly P. Hall is just, again, like drinking through a fire hose. He has so much information, so many topics and lectures and talks and books and pamphlets and schools and, the philosophical college papers he wrote that you could get lost for years. Hell, we've talked about him for over almost a half a decade now.
Yeah.
We've gone back and forth before the podcast of just all his talks, and we've lost ourselves in those holes. And then, which brings us to the 3rd category, which I find a lot of people gravitate towards Born in Blood. And it's interesting too. The Fraternal Review magazine published, I think it was February issue of Masonic Books. They talked about important books. If you're not familiar with it, the Fraternal Review is the research body of California's Grand Lodge. They publish a monthly paper, or just a short magazine. It is hands down one of the best materials that are being printed right now in Masonry. If you don't have it, I recommend subscribing to it. It is awesome. With that said, back to Robinson. Robinson wasn't a Mason, but he gets it. The Born in Blood is an awesome read, and The Pilgrim's Path is another great read. But it's Born in Blood gets into the whole ideology of the allegory of King Solomon's Temple, and those are familiar with Robinson's work, and ideology of the Templar and lineage and battles between the banking families and systems and control of what they want to call the population in Earth, and versus the whole idea of new world orders and old world orders, which kind of gets into brown symbology, but really tied into banking and the Templars. And then he connects Masonry. There's always arguments going back and forth that there is and isn't connections. Personally, I don't have an opinion on the matter. It's just I'm only reciting books.
You're like the Neil deGrasse Tyson. You're like, believe what you want.
Yeah, believe, it's up for you. It's your journey, and it's for you to figure out those answers. You'll be surprised what you find.
Yeah, to touch on the Fraternal Review, what I do like about that magazine, we are talking about reading, they are themed. It's very cool, and I have to give an immense shout out to the Fraternal Review. I've talked about them before. In fact, we did an episode where we did read their most popular books. When they publish an episode, or an issue rather, whatever the topic is, they go out and they find additional stuff that they can't even put in the magazine. For instance, if we had talked about the powers of meditation, they might publish the episode, or they'll put a little square, ad box on the page like, hey, here was an episode of Whence Came You that talked about meditation. Or, hey, here was an episode of the Masonic Roundtable that talked about the anti-Masonic sentiment in America in the turn of the century. These kind of things. But they are one of the better magazines out there. In fact, they're one of the only research body magazines that has a great publication. Missouri Lodge of Research is another one. They are fantastic magazines. There's not a whole lot out there in the way of magazines anymore since we lost Rob Hurd's Livingstones and we lost Sigler's The Working Tools. Maybe somebody out there is going to come out with something great again. That would be pretty cool. We do have the Philalethes magazine and we have the Journal. Those both tend to be more on the academic side. There's not as much speculation going on. Everything is very well written. So if you're looking for that, I would also say that within those, you're going to find not a lot of original ideas per se. That would be my only issue with them, is that they tend to talk about things that have been talked about before. So that is an issue. However, we talk about things over and over again on this show, on other shows, and in real life in Masonry. Going back on the subject of reading and not reading, I asked you what people are reading in your area, like typically. Born in Blood, really cool book. It's got its own camp. Interesting that you did lump that into its own category, because that is so true. I'm looking at my area, and I think what I see a lot of is reading of like these kind of state guys who were big in the state back in the day. Anthony Cerza for Illinois, these guys, they go back and they read these classic authors of their own Grand Lodge state, like as if nobody else matters. I find that's like almost provincial reading. Also, another great book that has been pushed around, and I think a lot of people like it, is Newton. Joseph Ford Newton, who wrote The Builder, or The Builders. I snagged a copy when I was actually at the Grand Lodge of Rhode Island, getting taken around there. They had a great copy. And when I was at the Valley of Madison, no less, just a little while back, maybe a year ago, I was flipping through one of these smaller versions of The Builder, and I broke the spine. I close it real quick and I slid it back in, and the brother who's standing next to me goes, "Oh man, they got a million of them, don't sweat it." He's like, "But that's a small version. You got one of those?" And I was like, "Well, I got one in Rhode Island." He's like, "Oh, do you have the big version, the hardcover?" I said, "No." He goes, "Dude, I've got 2 or 3 of them. I'll send you one." I said, "Okay." So I send him I give him my card, and literally the day we're recording this, Frater, this afternoon, I came home from running some errands, and he mailed me The Builder by Joseph Ford Newton. It's a big text, but that's probably another big text that a lot of guys read straight through. I think between him and Claudy, they kind of locked it down on a lot of the writing, a lot of this kind of working man's masonry. It touched on the symbolism in its own way, but during those times, that's all they got. I really don't see... Hall was out there doing his Philosophical Research Society talks and kind of doing those lecture series, but there was really nobody else out there doing this kind of stuff or writing these texts outside of, this thriving New Age stuff that kind of wound in and out, Amorc and all these kind of things.
You touched on a pretty interesting point that I overlooked, and thanks for bringing that up. It was about how people doing research like to get into the the analytical side, the very left brain side, right? So literally going back and focusing on just the historical content. And there's many Masons that can get into that too. There's nothing wrong with it. That's great. We need historians. We need people preserving information, which is great. So I think that's a whole other topic as well. What those people are reading as well. Yeah, I know you've done some pretty research.
Most of my academic research is done on the Word. It's something I study very arduously. I've caught flack in the past for continuing to do a talk called The Word because they say, well, you should change up your talk or whatever. But the idea here is that this presentation actually is expounded upon every year because every year I read 2 or 3 more books on the Word or the Tetragrammaton or the Lost Word or, some book on the legend. And so I end up adding all this in, but also the knowledge that comes out of books on string theory and quantum physics also plays into the idea of the Word as well. So it's constantly reading these texts and constantly having to cite materials and stuff. So yeah, very familiar with the academic side myself. In fact, I do a presentation on that. Is basically how to establish yourself as a Masonic writer or an authority in Masonic writing. It just goes over the basics. I did this for Illinois Lodge of Research most recently because the Illinois Lodge of Research doesn't get a lot of submissions, and we ask why. Well, it's because nobody's out there reading. Nobody's out there reading and stimulating their minds and stimulating their thoughts to write actual papers, even if it's to just put a few ideas down. But if you want to publish something, that's another story. This is why I was so passionate about the Midnight Freemasons. I don't know what it was, 6-7 years ago, Todd E. Creason was going to shut down the Midnight Freemasons, and I said, well, I'll manage it if you keep it open. And so we did, because this was one of the only places where people can read or do read Masonic stuff. Do you think, I would be curious, with the amount of time people spend on Facebook scrolling through feeds and reading things that other people have written or reading texts, if you translated that into a book, how many books do you think they read in a year? I'm sure that's something we could look up, but it just kind of struck me right now, if we had put that same effort into just reading a book, how many experts in Masonry we would have out there. You could ask anybody a question on a topic. How many of your lodges have that one guy that you go, somebody asks, and you immediately have to direct him to this other guy, the know-it-all guy, because he's the only guy in your lodge that reads. Out of the 15 guys who show up, that's the guy.
So you're that guy, huh?
I'm that guy at my lodge, but it's changing. Like, there are guys out there in my district who blow me away, and I'm like, so thrilled by this. I love it. A guy asked me a question the other day about, I think it was like just early Masonry, and I gave him an answer, and he said, yeah, so I was thinking about this. And I stopped and I said, yeah, that's a better answer actually, so I would research that. It's so important for these guys to dive in and to just do it, get deep. And reading stuff is going to be your main jumping off point. If a Midnight Freemason article does that for you, great. Or if picking up Secret Teachings of All Ages does that for you, that's great. Or if that's Milton A. Pottinger's Symbology, a treatise of all things, on the soul of things. Or, what was that really cool book that you turned me on to? Philosophy of Fire. You handed that book to me. You handed the Philosophy of Fire over to me at the House of the Temple. It's from the Rose Cross Order, the Grand Council. And that is a really good one as well. There's a great book out there that you can pick up for used, and it's about the Word, and that's like $1,250. So I recommend you go pick up that. But if you don't have $1,250, you just pick up the facsimile reprint for $10 on Amazon. The point here being that you hear about these great texts and you wonder how much they are or where you're going to find these things. 2 places, archive.org and Amazon if you need a print copy of something. Super important. Frater, what are some of your resources for books? Where do you like to go?
So there's this really great association called the International Association for Preservation of Spiritual and Occult Periodicals. They were created back in 2012, and they have over 7,000 books that have been digitally scanned that are PDFs that you could literally spend years through. Personally, I spend a lot of my time just in the archives there and just using the PDFs and searching and digging. It's amazing. We'll put a link in the show notes to them, and it's completely free. You can also buy a thumb drive too, and you can support them for hosting a lot of this as well. And Google, they're working with Google, keeping everything on source.
That's awesome.
It's all stuff past the copyright. That's where I spend a lot of my time in my research. But so what are the takeaways here? So say if I'm a young Mason and I'm new, I don't know where to go, I'm overwhelmed like we all once were. What do you say?
Well, if you're overwhelmed, we all are overwhelmed. So much of masonry, it feels like you went through the degrees like a firehouse sometime, or like a fire hose, right? Like you got a degree a month, or maybe you got them all in a day, whatever the case is. You feel like maybe you have to play catch up. So a lot of the guys that are coming into the fraternity today, I've noticed, already have a base knowledge of some sort of occult symbology or some sort of history they've already researched, or whatever the case is. And I feel like that's a great start. If I were to get a brand new Mason, the book I would hand them first, aside from, really I would give them two books. One that tells them about the organization they joined and how the administration works. This is the way things work. This is the way they happen. And so you should understand the goings on. But the second book is more on this is what I want you to contemplate, what I want you to work through as you think about the degrees that you went through. Now, of course, I can only reference texts that I've read, because I can't say go read Bromwell's book when I haven't read that book myself. Although I have heard from a multitude of people that Bromwell's book is like the book. You should read that book. So if I can't tell you that, what I would tell you to read is ask that you read The Lost Keys of Freemasonry by Manly P. Hall, because it's a short book that takes you through an initiatory experience, not unlike the one you went through, and should explain some cool things and the prestige and the deepness of the degrees. But I also might tell you to pick up a Mackey's Encyclopedia and read the entries that were pertinent to the points in the degrees. Whether it's you are now a Master Mason, I recommend you read the entire section on King Solomon's Temple. I recommend you read the entire section as an EA. I recommend you read the entire section on the Tyler's Sword. I recommend you read different keys within the degrees. I would almost put together chunks of information and say, read these things. You know, it's a real shame Anthony Mongelli's not around anymore. He's still alive. He's just, from what I understand, not practicing masonry any longer. But he wrote a great book that I recommended to most of my entered apprentices, which was the Selected Symbols of the Entered Apprentice Degree. It was a fantastic book. It was gave great, insightful information. And I think it's not about giving you everything that you need, right? Because it's giving you a text that you can read, that you can easily understand and comprehend. It's about doing that, but throwing some wood on the fire. You know what I mean? How about you? What would you give, let's say like whatever you think, a new EA, FC, Master Mason? What's a recommended reading material that you would recommend right off the bat?
Usually most of my close friends that become Masons, there's two books I usually give them that were really profound impacts. One was given to me by a Mason when I went through. It's called The Secret Science of the Masonic Initiation by Brother Robert Losma, or Loma, depending on how you pronounce it. You can get it really cheap for like $6 used on Amazon. And he's great. He's a professor at Oxford University. He's written a few different great books as well. The Turning of the Hiram's Key with Christopher Knight. But this book in particular, short, it's sweet, it's not big at all. It's probably like not even 90 pages, probably 60. I had to take a guess, maybe even shorter. And it's small. It's not big print. So it's a quick read. You can get through it literally in one day if you're a fast reader. The second book is Freemasonry in the 21st Century by Don Bradley. And it's deep. It's not for every Mason. It's the Mason. It's really for the Mason that's on a deep path, that's looking for more. And I've given it to a few people, and they were just like, I don't understand. That's fine. You know, maybe they don't understand it right this moment, but who knows? In a few years, they might pick that back up again, and it might speak to them as we peel back more layers of yourself. So those two books have had probably the most profound impact that helped me in my path and my journey. Which I wish I would have read Don Bradley's book earlier, because if I read Don Bradley's book earlier, it would have saved me probably about a good 5 years of personal research.
Yeah.
of like chakras and get into different religions, and he sums it up in really one great book, which is awesome, which is great. But if I'm not giving those 2 books to someone, then it's definitely just, hey, let's go sit back and look at ritual.
Yep.
Let's pay attention to ritual, and then grab a beer with them afterwards and go, so what did you see? And allow them to come to their conclusions instead of telling them what they should see, right? And pulling back those layers, because there's so much to be seen in ritual. As we talked about before in our consciousness episode, if you have a golf ball size consciousness when you look at something, you'll have a golf ball size understanding. So you want to peel back those layers of yourself to absorb more, especially during ritual. And you don't have to really be the main character in that play again. You just have to be able to sit back and observe what the main character in that play is doing in that allegory.
I appreciate the idea of it, and it may seem counterintuitive to some that you're peeling away layers, yet you're growing bigger. And through this idea that it's so interesting that you said you want to take them out for a beer or whatever, and you say, what did you see? Because we don't understand. We don't take the time for self-reflection. Nobody says go home and really think about it. Like you thought about it. Yeah. Like, oh, I remember getting those degrees. It was neat. But really thinking about it. And to aid that, it's so important to have somebody, a mentor, or just somebody, that guardian angel who's going to sit with you and say, what do you think you represented at this point in the degree? What did you think when this guy said this to you? And again, no right or wrong answers, but to get the individual to really think about it. What else? Give them the 5 what else's. What else? What else? What else? What else? What else? Take them and let them get uncomfortable in thinking about their answers, because that's when they're going to grow, really. And I think that really aids in that ability to self-reflect, and you're going to build that skill within them. If you can do that for somebody, now the next time they go on and they go see a Scottish Rite degree or something, and there's nobody there to tell them what else, ask them these questions, they're already in the practice of doing it. What else? Yeah, oh man, did you notice this happened? Maybe that's an allusion to time, or whatever the case may be. But it is definitely important, and I really appreciate that you shared that, and I hope a lot of guys out there do that with their mentees.
I mean, when you get those 2 books in particular, the first book by Lasma, it gets right into the ritual, and it breaks it down at a 4th grade level, really simple on, hey, there's a lot more going on here than what you think, and it's more just like kind of just scratching the surface, and then it allows that person to kind of go from there. And,
yeah.
But if one thing you can take away from what we're talking about, and if you're not a reader, go back and sit back and lodge and try to pay attention to what's going on.
Yep, that, or seriously, audible.com. There's a really interesting guy out there, and if you go on Audible and you do a search for like Masonic papers or whatever, just type in Freemasonry, and you're going to see some kind of generic looking images, screenshots, or like cover art for books that are being read. And some of them aren't books, they're really long papers. And there's this one dude out there, I can't remember his name, but dude's pretty awesome. If that guy, hey man, if you're the guy on Audible who reads all those papers, I love you.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah. Because this guy, he doesn't just read the paper. Like, he puts together like a really kind of a thoughtful couple essays, and then he reads the paper. And it's really cool. I appreciate everything this guy's doing. It's really cool. So you can go and you can just do that. Listen to these papers at least. Audible is great that way, and it allows us to get through even more. It allows the readers to get through more, but it allows the non-readers to experience and to really grow without having to buckle down on reading. My brother-in-law, he said basically he just can't read. As much as he wants to read, he falls asleep, like every time. Reading just puts him to sleep. And it can do that to me at times as well, especially if it's digital reading, which is why I much prefer printed page. What was it? The first time we were in DC, I was scrolling through my phone and I got an email that was like, hey, get a Kindle Paperwhite for $79. And lights are out. We're both getting ready to go to sleep. And I'm like, I think I'm going to get this Kindle. And I just went ahead and said, screw it. I bought it. And it's been great. That's how I read the first Milton A. Pottinger book before I bought the text. I read Philosophy of Fire that way. So take advantage of your resources and do it right and just dive in. But obviously, as Frodero said, if you just can't do it, a good and wonderful thing to do is to go back and watch the ritual and pay attention.
If you have concentration issues, we've covered it many times in past episodes. If you're new listening, definitely go back, listen to the concentration episode. We've done a few episodes on health and how RJ and myself have both overcome some serious health obstacles, especially me with ADD and the ability and the attention to read and retain. So definitely peruse back, listen. If you've already heard it, listen again. We always enjoy the support.
Yeah, and I have to say, this episode is about reading and a little bit about focus. And I said at the beginning we would touch on a lot of stuff. And because we always do necessarily, these topics aren't always just, so focused that we can't diverge and talk about a few more interesting areas. And we went into meditation and we talked a little bit about health benefit. And I know there's people out there like, oh, really, meditation and health benefits and yoga or whatever. I found it interesting because in Michael R. Pohl's recent book, I know I've talked about it several times in the last few weeks on a multitude of platforms. He tells a personal story in there about when he was a kid. Close personal friend of his family when he was a kid was a yoga instructor. She joined the church and the church told her she can't do it anymore because yoga is like forbidden. You just can't do it or whatever. And so there's that kind of mindset that maybe it's out there or whatever, or maybe people who think that, all this holistic stuff is just not real. There's no real benefit to it. But it doesn't get much more real than like the Mayo Clinic. And if you go to the Mayo Clinic and you type in meditation, it's like a simple, fast way to reduce stress. And in fact, it gives you a multitude of things that meditation helps with. It says it helps with anxiety, asthma, cancer, chronic pain, depression, heart disease, high blood pressure, IBS, sleep problems, tension headaches. It helps emotionally through gaining new perspectives, building skills and managing stress, increasing self-awareness, which is so huge, guys. Increasing the focus on the present, reducing negative emotions, increasing imagination and creativity, patience and tolerance. I mean, meditations have huge benefits. It's probably the one thing that people don't do that is like part of your biology that we should do. We sleep, we eat, and meditation should be in there somewhere for this. We have this physical activity. You have got to do it. Make that time, because if you're serious about making yourself better, if you're serious about increasing your brain, like capacity for all things, meditation. My work, where I'm employed, actually just sent out an email blanket from HR that was like, hey, we purchased X amount of blocks for Headspace. So sign up. It's free now for you, for the employees. So all the employees got Headspace, which is like an app for meditation. It's guided meditation. Why would they do that? Because it's good for you. It's good.
I mean, you could go into any like Nightingale Institute book that you'll find in self-help, and they always talk about meditation and concentration, to Tony Robbins, to even tech billionaires, and entrepreneurs. They all talk about the fundamentals and the importance of meditation and quieting the ego and quieting the mind for concentration and the ability to focus. The whole idea, I know that when you get into the Silicon Valley and the tech region, transcendental meditation seems to kind of be a hot topic. And, there's different genres of it. And there's the whole movement of, the art of mindfulness, right? Or the power of now. So you have to find what works for you, but there's been plenty of scientific evidence and facts that show up that help you meditate and empower it. So hopefully it's one thing you take away. Granted, we talked about books, but, for both of us to be able to focus, we have to do meditation. It's like a daily ritual for both of us. And if I'm not meditating, I find myself picking up that book, like you mentioned earlier in the show, on being 3 pages or 3 chapters in and being like, I have no idea what I just read. My mind is focused on the stress of this or the stress of that, or family or work or whatever it may be. And, just learning to center your mind, the importance of it.
Absolutely. I think that's where we're going to end it. Frodero, thanks so much for being on the program and sharing the knowledge you have with all the listeners. I know I receive countless messages, and they say, no offense, RJ, but the Frodero episodes are my favorite. So you're a key player in this, and I really appreciate it every time you come on.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure.
Brother George Washington was fascinated with the tools used in espionage, and in fact, there are books that delve into the subject. It's understandable. The man had a revolution to win. Invisible ink was one of Brother Washington's favorite tools, but it was fairly ineffective. Invisible ink of the day was made of a concoction largely comprised of lemon juice. The British were well aware of that type of invisible ink and knew all that had to be done to expose the writing was to subject it to heat. The process of heating the paper made it brittle, and not many of the secret documents created that way survive today. Realizing the fallibility of lemon-based ink, Washington eventually used a special chemical ink which James Jay, brother of 1st U.S. Chief Justice John Jay, had developed. Jay's ink was invisible until a second chemical agent revealed it, and was far more effective. This particular formula, known as sympathetic stain, consisted of ferrous oxide granules dissolved in water. A solution of sodium carbonate, more commonly known as baking soda, and water applied to the ink made it visible. One rare surviving invisible ink specimen Washington sent involves another well-known aspect of his life: his troublesome teeth. It is a letter to his dentist, Dr. John Baker. In it, the general complains of a rough spot on his infamous dentures and requests the dentist send him one of his cleaning tools. It might at first seem ridiculous Washington would be so careful as to write such an innocuous letter to his dentist in invisible ink. But Washington knew if the letter fell into the wrong hands, it would provide British intelligence with the name of a pro-American dentist, as well as Washington's location, New Windsor, New York. The British, in fact, did intercept the letter. Accounts differ as to the ramifications of its capture. Some say the British were unable to read it, and that may have saved Washington's dentist's life. Some say the British decoded it and were amused by its content. Others say it provided valuable information as to Washington's whereabouts. Whatever the case, Washington made ample use of invisible ink and secret messages during the American Revolution, and even had an organized spy ring, the Culpers, to, among other duties, deliver those messages. George Washington's most important secrets, it seems, had nothing to do with the Freemasons. For the Whence Came You podcast, this is Steve Harrison with the Masonic Minute.
All right, I hope you enjoyed both that fun talk we had with Frodero as well as that really great Masonic Minute with illustrious Brother Stephen L. Harrison. If you haven't already picked up that book, The Masonic Memoranda of Frederick Billen, definitely check that out. Go to our website, wcypodcast.com, and you can just kind of hover over the From Us to You, and you can click on that bookshop, and you'll see where you can purchase those books. Any books by any author we've had on this program should be there in linked form, which should take you to the page that you can purchase that, whether that's on an actual Brothers site or Amazon or wherever. There's no kickbacks there. That's just a neat place that you can go and click on the cover image of the books that you're interested in and order them that way. Also under that From Us to You, we have our remastered Manly P. Hall lectures. If you click on that and then click on that ominous photo of Manly P. Hall, you can actually download the remastered Manly P. Hall lectures that were sent to me by Worshipful Brother Gerald Brown, basically what I did was I took these 23 Manly P. Hall lectures that you can essentially download from anywhere on the interwebs, and I cleaned them up. So they are now in 320 kilobyte dual channel constant joint stereo, and we knocked down all of that white noise by almost 95%. So it's really rad. So again, if you appreciate this kind of stuff, feel free to make a donation to our show, or more importantly, to the Philosophical Research Society or to the Cure Epilepsy Foundation. And we have links to those in our remastered Manly P. Hall lectures page. So just a couple things to think about as you enjoy those and glean some cool insights from Manly P. Hall. Speaking of donations, of course, we do have ways for you to support this program. This is listener-supported education, and we do appreciate that. It is what makes this program possible. You can make a direct donation by hovering over Support the Show, click on Make a Direct Donation, and when you're there, you can either make a one-time donation or you can set up a monthly contribution, whether you want to be a $2 contributor, a $5 fellow, or a $10 producer through PayPal. Those are all appreciated and great ways to give back to this program, again, to assist us in all of our programming that we try to put together for you. Coming up in the next few weeks, just to give you an idea, we've got episodes from Adam Thayer coming out, and we are even going to have a few guest hosts come on the program, do some crossovers. It's going to be amazing. I'm in the process of setting all that up now. I've got to send some microphones around the country, actually, to get these episodes recorded. So be aware of that. It'll be really great. And your donations make all that possible. We also have a limited edition shop where you can pick up Pell pins, the cufflinks, money clip, or a tie bar. We even have a Mason's Lady vinyl car decal, which is pretty rad. Family friend made them, and I'm just so happy that I have them now. Finally, my wife has one on her car, and you can check out on Instagram. Some folks have taken pictures and tagged us in those. Really cool. To go back to our lapel pin, that is a very unique design. You're not going to find that anywhere else other than right here. It's not something that you're going to find at your Grand Lodge sessions or anywhere else. The only place you get it is through me, or if you find Fraudero, or if you find me on the street, I will always have a pin for you. But it is a triangle shape, which alludes to the self, the spiritual man in material. We've got all kinds of symbolism in here. A red border that we use to symbolize the Royal Arch degrees. We have the words "Whence came you," which actually are from Ritual, but were the words of a bumper sticker, and that was my mentor's favorite bumper sticker, so that's kind of an homage to him, and that's why the show is named as such. We have a secondary triangle, which symbolizes the internal, the inside of which is contained all of the other symbols and the working tools. Like inside man are all the tools that we need to build our temporal building. We have the square and compasses, just like in Ritual, the gavel, the setting maul, the plumb, the all-seeing eye, which we have kind of a double meaning here, which is the ever watchful eye of the Creator, also to the mind's eye from which emanate these rays of light, which we are very conscious of. There are actually 7 of the rays of light, each ray representing one of the 7 liberal arts and sciences, so grammar, rhetoric, logic, arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy. The rays emanate from the all-seeing eye, or the mind's eye. We use the color green because it is synonymous in Masonry with education. We have the sprigs of acacia symbolizing the perpetuation of life after death and the eternity of the soul, and of course the cool little added bit of the cipher symbols on there, so the Pigpen cipher translating into WCY. And then of course we have our affiliates. So we've got Onnit. You can click on there and go through our links. Use the promo code WCY at checkout. Get yourself 10% off there. We have WCY and Thrive. You can just click the link and do whatever you got to do there. And of course, Bankers Best. So if you go to Bankers Best, their website is buybankersbest.com, but if you go to buybankersbest.com/WCY podcast, that's where you're going to help us out. And whatever you purchase, we get a little bit back to the show, especially if you get any of those really cool products that were made for us in collaboration with Brother Levi Banker, those Solomon's beard oil and beard balms, where 50% of the profits come back to this program. So we do appreciate everybody out there doing that shopping. You know, it's a win-win. You get something. You're helping out Brother Levi Banker by promoting a Masonic-owned business. And of course, you're helping with the assist of Masonic education in terms of this program. So again, many thanks to all of you for listening to this program. Can't do it without you. You've been immensely supportive, and hopefully we'll get our act together over at the Masonic Roundtable and get an episode up there as well this Tuesday. And speaking of other sites, please don't forget to check out the Midnight Freemasons, where we publish 3 articles every single week, Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Monday, we had a great piece from Stephen L. Harrison about becoming a Masonic writer. Wednesday, I wrote a little bit about my experience as a DDGM and having to write a district report for the year end, which is by no means a dry piece of writing. It was very interesting to have to write, and I had a lot of great feelings about writing it. It was a great reflecting activity. As my time was served this year as a District Deputy Grand Master, I had so many great memories of the lodges this year, and all of the help and what the lodges in my district have done has just been fantastic. So I got to write about that a little bit of bragging on behalf of our great lodges here in the 1st Northeastern District of the Grand Lodge of the state of Illinois. And of course, on Friday, we had this great piece where Worshipful Brother Scott Duball followed up with his Lutheran Approach series, which is just fantastic. And if you are a scholar or somebody who is serious about Masonic research, not somebody who's fly-by-night with just unfounded claims and all this, then this is for you. This is how you can make a real difference in Masonic education, is by following some of the ground rules that Worshipful Brother Scott has laid out in some of these pieces, and follow that advice, follow Steve's advice, and you can't go wrong. So, until next week, everybody, stay on the level. For Whence Came You, I'm Robert Johnson.
You've been listening to Whence Came You, a Masonic podcast featuring research papers and discussions related to Freemasonry with your host, Brother Robert Johnson. Be sure to join us for our next edition.